All right, so I am Nora McKenzie. I'm a member of the Business Reference and Academic Libraries Committee for BRASS, and I am the co-chair of our Symposia subcommittee alongside Christy Cunningham, who is also my co-chair. So I wanted to extend a special thanks to our subcommittee, which is Angel Truesdale, Brian Garrison-Wynn, and Doris Dwee. Everybody has been just such a great help and done such great work to make this symposium happen today. So all sessions will be recorded and we will have those sent out to everybody who's registered. So if you could go ahead and if you haven't already, mute your audio and your video as we get started so we can really make sure the focus is on our presenters. So thank you again for spending time with BRASS and our presenters today. Our very first session will be Enhancing Business Research Skills with AI Integration, a practical approach for academic business librarians. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Doris to get us started.
Thank you so much, Nora. And so I would take this pleasure at this moment to introduce our fantastic speakers, and they are Morgan Ritchie-Baum, and I also have Summer Kersteska. Both are from Wake Forest University. So ladies, please go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Doris, so much. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen set up here and go ahead and open the chat. So I will be monitoring the chat throughout our presentation today. So please, I encourage you, as you have questions or comments, do feel free to drop those in the chat. I'll be monitoring that and Doris will be helping me along. So Summer, can I get a thumbs up? Can you see my screen okay? Awesome, fabulous. All right, so as Doris said, we are here to talk about enhancing business research skills with AI integration. My name is Morgan Ritchie-Baum. I am the librarian for business and social studies, and I'll let my wonderful colleague introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Summer Kersteska. I am the librarian for business, economics, and data access. And together we are Team Business at Wake Forest. So thanks for having us.
Awesome. All right. So today in our presentation, we're hoping to provide you some insight into how you can integrate artificial intelligence tools into your research instruction. If you've been thinking about doing it, maybe haven't done it quite yet, or maybe you are doing it and maybe we'll provide a different perspective about how we're doing it here at Wake Forest. We're really doing this to try and help students improve their search accuracy and relevance when searching specifically in business research databases. As you will see, we do this by discussing a use case we developed when teaching graduate students specifically in a Master's of Business Analytics program here. They are going about conducting early stage secondary research as they prepare to work with clients as business consultants as part of their program practicum. So we really hope by the end of the presentation, you're going to have some further context about the use of artificial intelligence tools and research instruction, as well as some insights into how we view kind of their practical application when it comes to guiding students in locating, analyzing, and synthesizing information, really for very kind of complex business case studies. All right. So to kind of set the stage, I'm going to basically provide kind of a high-level overview of how artificial intelligence is currently being utilized and understood and implemented at our university, which is Wake Forest University. If you're not familiar with us, we're a small private liberal arts university in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I think will probably come as no surprise, like a lot of universities and colleges across the country, Wake Forest has no official policy or mandate in terms of how AI should or can be used in the classroom or in professional work affiliated with the university, outside of kind of the common request not to upload sensitive information into any sort of AI tools. But the university does provide a lot of ongoing professional development opportunities for faculty, students, and staff every semester, focusing on helping community members understand kind of the practical and ethical applications and implications of AI tools. Wake Forest has provided us enterprise level to Google's Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and Adobe Firefly. And then a number of departments, including the library, do purchase premium access to ChatGPT, for example, for faculty and staff use. We are really lucky that in the spring of 2024, Wake Forest Center for the Advancement of Teaching, which we call CAT, launched a survey that was sent to all Wake Forest students to help the center and the university by proxy better understand student views of artificial intelligence. So 1,800 students responded to the survey. And so for context, Wake Forest has a student body of around 9,000 students. That includes undergraduates and graduate students. But as you can see here, this first chart kind of describes our school affiliation. So we have a School of Medicine, we of course have a School of Business, and then we have the college, which houses the majority of our undergraduate disciplines. And so this first chart kind of describes the school affiliation of respondents. So I'll let you take a look at that. And then this second chart gives you a sense of kind of the disciplinary breakdown. So really no surprise at this early stage, we saw a lot of our computer science kind of STEM focused disciplines really embracing AI, but not too far behind were our business students. So to kind of continue on providing you some kind of context about what our situation is like here at Wake Forest, in this next chart, you can kind of see the frequency of AI use as reported by students. And this also includes a further breakdown by gender. And then that last chart, we kind of begin to get a sense of the types of tasks that respondents report using artificial intelligence with, by breakdown of what their semester hours are. So I will say this was last spring that the survey was released. And since the survey, kind of the overall sentiment on campus amongst faculty and staff is that the student use of AI is only increasing. And I think if judging by what we can see on students' screens in classes and when walking through campus, if that is any indication, this sentiment is soundly justified that their use is increasing. All right. All right, so now finally to kind of provide the last bit of context, let's talk a little bit about the class that Summer and I implemented this use of artificial intelligence in our instruction. So the use case we will describe in just a minute takes place in our MSBA practicum classroom. So Wake Forest Master of Science in Business and Analytics program. It's a 10-month program. Students learn to apply analytics across kind of like the key business disciplines, so like financing, marketing, operations, human resources. And then they do acquire skills like Python, Tableau, SQL. And we usually have a student body of about 120 students. Experiential learning is a true cornerstone of the program. So students work in teams with small and large businesses and corporations, as well as nonprofit organizations, municipalities. We've seen them work with police departments, fire departments, et cetera. And they address a real world problem using analytics as part of the practicum experience. So students are going to work on this practicum project over the fall and spring semesters, and it's integrated into actually 3 courses over the course of their 10 months. And you can see here on the screen are just some examples of some of the projects students have worked on in the past. So very kind of wide range of projects that they're working on. So really as library liaisons, Summer and I come to the program usually right at the beginning of the fall semester when the practicum project is introduced. We provide kind of an initial full class instruction session just to introduce these students to library resources for the project. And then we go straight into consulting with the teams one-on-one about secondary and primary research needs and their kind of help develop their research strategy. And then throughout the rest of their time, we'll meet with them one-on-one as they begin to develop the project. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Summer to talk about research hurdles.
Thank you, Morgan. So, in the past, we've worked with this class now. I've worked with this class for almost 6 years. Morgan's been on board for 3 or 4 now. So we've witnessed quite a few different research hurdles these students are experiencing. Not so much different from other research courses, actually, but they're just really emphasized in this case because they have a real world deliverable. So in general, students are lacking context around the research process, research tools, industry jargon, and more. This is not an exhaustive list. I actually could have doubled the research hurdles that are listed here, but I got to keep it condensed for the slide. And of course, more trouble arises because the research hurdles really vary by the group, the skills they bring to the group, each individual student, and then also what project that they're focusing on. So that makes it really fun and challenging for Morgan and I when we consult with them. But I do just want to highlight the bottom 3 because I think they're the most relevant to the activity we implemented that we're going to be telling you about. So of course the students, they struggle with keyword development for searching Google and the library's resources. They get a problem statement or a challenge, and it's hard for them to go beyond like the words in that problem statement because they're not really in that industry. Um, they struggle with advanced searching and Booleans of, I mean, who could blame them? But often, they're doing a narrow search or it's just too shallow. It's very quick. And then one big thing is they're either not trying or not able to find examples or case studies of like that specific problem, either in the industry they're dealing with or in parallel industries. They don't want to believe that this problem has ever been solved before or thought about before. So hopefully you'll see how our activity we attempted to mitigate some of these hurdles.
All right. So, talking a little bit more specifically about why Summer and I thought AI could be a potential solution to some of these research hurdles we had been kind of consistently seeing throughout our time working with the students. The first and foremost was that their faculty member who leads this experience is very bullish on artificial intelligence. And has already extensively integrated artificial intelligence into several aspects of the course and really encourages students to experiment and use artificial intelligence as kind of part of their like workforce development and employability. So we already knew kind of going into this that students would probably be using artificial intelligence heavily in their research anyway. So we wanted to kind of provide a framework and maybe some guardrails for how they could think more strategically about using artificial intelligence in the research process. Additionally, in our own work, Summer and I have really found that AI's ability to generate keywords, search strings, and be that quote unquote industry expert that so many of our students who in this particular program don't have much work experience, right? They're not actually out in the field yet doing work, can be incredibly useful and insightful, as I hope we will ultimately demonstrate to you. So for this particular assignment, we leaned heavily on the tools that Wake Forest provides our students already. So that was Gemini and Copilot. Because this is an MSBA business analytics class, a lot of the students, though, had already purchased premium subscriptions to ChatGPT. So we did notice quite a few students were utilizing ChatGPT for this activity. But I would say kind of across the board, the results from all the language models, Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, all of them were useful. And in terms of the prompting that we did, they worked across all the different platforms.
So when we were developing our instruction plan, what activity we were going to do, like I mentioned before, we've gone into this class multiple times over the years, and we have activities that we're constantly iterating. But we stumbled across a big roadblock for us, and that was when the faculty member informed us that the students, when we will be going in the classroom, they will not have their assigned client yet. And usually that's not the case. Usually they already have their client assigned, and we do some really in-depth team consulting when we're in the classroom. And sometimes we don't even have an activity. So we're like, oh, whoa, wait. Okay, so we need to rethink this. We need to switch it up. And then we had to think back on some previous activities that we did. And we realized, students tend to rush ahead in our activities. They're not really going at the pace we want them to. So we decided with this activity that we were going to display one instruction at a time on, on the whiteboard, well, in our case, slides, and force them to do it as a giant group. I mean, they were working in their teams, but still, we all talked about the question and the instructions together. And yeah, we had to pace them out. We didn't even put the instructions on the activity, but we did for you today because we want you to have the activity. And then also we thought about, okay, how can we implement AI? Because as Morgan mentioned, the professor is really into AI, and Morgan and I are excited about it as well. So as Morgan mentioned, AI is great at acting as an industry expert. So I'm going to tell you on the next slide how we added that into our activity. And you can go to the next slide, Morgan. Okay. Sorry, they have the same background. I didn't even notice you changed it. So I put here two persona examples. So creating a persona is good AI prompt engineering practice. For those of you that maybe don't know this, you get better results if you tell the AI to act in a certain way by giving it a persona. So we came up with two persona ideas that we did provide the students. We actually provided a third one too, but the first one is called the academic librarian, and the description here will give you an idea. Like you tell AI you are an academic librarian with expertise in navigating and conducting research with academic databases. You know how to structure complex searches using Boolean operators, and you are proficient in narrowing down results to find scholarly and industry relevant materials. So we're hoping that this would help students get into the mindset of a role that they've been asked to fill, that they have little to no experience performing up until this point. Next slide, please. So here we have the activity linked for y'all. We're going to go over a few parts of it. Morgan's put a link in the chat for you. Okay, so here's the activity. Of course, we start off the activity by asking them to just really reflect on what problem that they've been given. In this case, we just had them pick one from the list of projects that they could possibly have. That sounded interesting to them, but we had them really think about, okay, what are you being asked to do? What is the outcome here? And then we had them try to brainstorm on their own some keywords. And from there, we asked them to open up one of the AI tools and have AI come up with some keywords for them. And I actually ran this prompt and put it on the slide that I'm going to show you next. So I'll show you the results that Gemini gave in this case. And then the other major task that we had them do is use AI to generate a Boolean, well, a search string using Booleans. And that also I have on the slide for you, the results. But basically each time it's iteration. It's like, okay, think on your own of some ideas. Now ask AI for some ideas. Try it on your own and iterate again. Like what was good, what was bad about this scenario, and how can you adjust this in AI or on your own from here?
And I will just quickly add this aspect of having them, this is where it became really useful, right? To not actually have each instruction written out on the worksheet. So as Summer mentioned, we've input the instructions for you here just for it to be easier to share. But we had each of these instructions actually listed in a slide. We go one at a time because we really wanted them to use their own, work together in their groups. For a lot of them, this was their first time working in these groups, right? To kind of get a sense of where each group member was at as they were kind of understanding what a potential project could be and how they would go about defining keywords, but then having them do that and then go into the AI, have the AI do it, we started to see some light bulbs clicking, and actually their own kind of ideas started to explode after that. They started coming up with actually even more keywords than what the AI generated.
So this is the first task I mentioned. We had them ask one of the AI tools to generate some search terms for them based off of their problem statement. Of course, AI generated some general keywords that the students are more than capable, I think, of coming up with based on their problem statement. But here you'll see some of the specific ones that it came up with. In this case, I used the example of supermarket price value communications assessment. It was one of the examples on one of Morgan's previous slides. But you could see how the AI is helping prompt the students' creative thinking, helping them realize, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that like larger concept or that more niche concept from other classes. And oh, okay, that relates to this challenge or problem that I'm trying to solve with my team. And then AI also provided these additional tips here on the side about how to combine Booleans or like improve the search, which I thought was interesting. Go to the next slide. So this is the other main task from the activity, the results that Gemini provided. And in this case, the students used the persona. They chose which persona they wanted to use and said like, okay, act like this persona. Here's my problem statement. Can you please create a focused Boolean search string? And this is the search string that Gemini came up with. It's quite complex. And then Gemini also suggested, a publication date limit, source types, gives a little explanation about Boolean logic, which is nice. But, not only are students seeing how these keywords connect together. But what actually ended up happening was for a majority of them, they put this search string into ProQuest Central, which is the database we asked them to use, because so many of the project topics are just like all over the place. They're not all like solely business focused. That's a side conversation though. They were getting no results because this is like a super specific search string. But this allowed us to have a conversation with them to remind them that, AI is a tool. It's not human. It's not perfect. You need to take the time to revise what AI provides you and to think critically about what you've been asked to do. So we had a lot of great conversations with them about how they could revise or how they could break this up into multiple searches, how the research that they're going to have to do needs to probably be a 2 or 3 or 4 pronged approach. Like you're not just going to get all the answers in one search. So I thought it was a really fruitful conversation. Like even though, Morgan and I originally were thinking, oh, they're going to get great results with what AI comes up with, it ended up leading us to a very necessary conversation. All right, so like with the research hurdles, I could have made this slide a lot longer, but this is our thoughts on what we would change and what we would keep, and really just how we would improve this activity if we were to do it again. One thing is we would really spend more time brainstorming all together first before even opening the activity, because students only went so deep with that when we asked them to do it on their own. We would definitely talk about determining relevance and talking about how to synthesize different sources. AI helps them, but on the second pass, to avoid information overload, students always struggle with that, right? Even if all the results are super relevant, now that they have this awesome part AI created Boolean search string, I mean, it's still overwhelming to be like, oh, I have to read like 1,000 results here. How do I know which ones are relevant? So talking more about that, talking about challenges with data. So as I kind of briefly alluded to, some of these problems that they've been asked to consult on are super niche. They require local data and private company information. So we do mention like, okay, it's going to be really hard to find that, and you're going to have to use proxy data, proxy information, but talking about how AI might hallucinate these things and make you think they're providing you some information that is real, but it's probably not. So just talking about that, talking about further applications for use of AI in this particular consulting class, right? Like, oh, AI could help you come up with some questions to ask your client when you have a meeting with them, or help you review your proposal to your client, etc. There's a lot of different applications. We also would probably spend some more time talking about prompt engineering, though we talked about the persona and why they should use a persona in class. Like I think there's a lot more opportunity there. And last but not least, kind of prep the students ahead of time about search iteration. I mentioned, they did the search and didn't find anything, but talking to them as a group rather than individually on that topic. Morgan, would you like to add anything?
I think I would just emphasize, as Summer mentioned in the last slide, a lot of them, the Boolean search strings that we helped them craft via artificial intelligence, as Summer mentioned, were incredibly complex. So a lot of times, we put them into the search, we get 0 results. But that was actually really fruitful for students as well, to have a conversation about how not everything AI produces is actually going to be useful straight out of the box. That there has to be a human component. In terms of customizing it, right, to meet the needs of what the situation is facing. And to Victoria, I see Victoria put a great question in the chat. How much class time did you have for this session? So for that initial, how much class time? We had 75 minutes for the class session. We were given the entire class session. And I do think that the changes we would like to make would definitely fit into the same amount of time. I think it would just be a matter of, I think in our presentation, there would be some stuff we would take out, right, in favor of really emphasizing the opportunity to kind of converse more as a whole, as a group as a whole. Anything you would add to that, Summer?
Also, just typically when we go into this class, we do like a really brief presentation on what it is we feel we need to talk about. Because we will be consulting on the side with almost all of these teams, like they come and make personal research consultations with us. So I think there's also the opportunity to talk about these things in the consultations, depending on like what level of depth we would need to talk about them, depending on their project or their skill level.
Yeah. All right. So going forward, kind of like how we have taken this experience and begun to apply it in terms of other aspects of our work. So we've started using this, especially exploring keywords and getting a little bit more creative with keywords and kind of exposing students to what we mean when we say like, take your research question and break it down. We've really started using that aspect of AI in a lot of our one-shots, especially now with our undergraduate students, as just opposed to our graduate students. We've actually found AI to be really helpful in terms of our research consultations in the sense that Summer and I are the only two librarians that serve our School of Business, our graduate students, and our undergraduate students. So a lot of time, especially right now, it's finals for us. We are totally booked up, and we have some really desperate students pounding down our doors for research help. Sometimes, as a stopgap measure, we can send them some suggestions for prompts that they can put into artificial intelligence if they're allowed to use that in their projects to begin thinking of some ways that they can begin to craft some more advanced search strings to help them find the information that they're looking for in some of the databases.
And we've also used AI now to help us in our class that we just developed. We teach a 1.5 credit elective course called Lib 290, and we used AI to generate some really custom case studies that fit our class and the concepts we're trying to teach. We made something we call reading guides to help guide the students through the assigned readings. We've used it to create reflection prompts and discussion questions, rubrics, you name it, designing lecture slides. The list is pretty long. But also we are currently engaged in a research project of our own. We'll be surveying some of our graduate students. So we've used AI to help us brainstorm survey questions or at least revise them, see how they could be improved, and also to help with our literature review. There's a great AI literature review tool called Research Rabbit AI. So helps you see like the gaps and what literature is connected to what. So anyway, it's been fun. It's been adventurous over here.
So kind of the last thing we're going to leave you with, I'm going to drop this in the chat and go ahead and open it up. As we started to kind of develop these prompts that we were finding them to be incredibly useful, both in our one-shot instruction and in our own work and our personal research sessions that we were doing, we wanted to try and capture that information. So I was very lucky to be able to take over the summer ALA's prompt engineering for librarians course, where I was introduced to the idea of crafting a prompt library, which you can see here. So it's very kind of a simple concept, but I've found it to be such a time saver and really useful for, as you can see, some of these prompts get to be very extensive, right? And you miss one sentence in that prompt, trying to go from memory, and you're not going to get the same kind of quality of results that you were used to. So I found that using these prompt libraries that Summer and I can share is really, really useful. So I wanted to be able to share that with the group as well. So this is something that you can copy and paste and add on to. Just to kind of give you a breakdown of how the prompt library is organized, this is the style we were suggested in the ALA course. You give it a type, right? So you can quickly, like, I need to look for something that's going to help me with research. I need a prompt that's going to help me with assessment, synthesis, etc. You provide kind of the use case. Again, this is meant for if you need to jog your memory, like, why did I use this prompt in the first place? You provide the prompt itself, right? And the notes is actually where it gets really fun, right? Because you can talk about all the different ways you can customize the prompt. So I found this incredibly useful to go back in, and I can pull these prompts out, customize them to my particular use case, and then sometimes even iterate on that. So that's something I definitely wanted to be able to share with the group. All right. So with that being said, we are at 1:30. So I wanted to open the floor to questions. So I see Jennifer asked a question. Have you found one or two Gen AI tools or even a specific model within a tool is better for your prompts over others? Yes. So, and I just realized I didn't drop that in the chat. So for me, Jennifer, Summer may have a different opinion. For me, ChatGPT 4o I've had the most success with. nothing. My least favorite has probably been Copilot. I just find the responses sometimes to not be very in depth. Summer, I know, uses Claude a lot as well. Um, but in terms of like these prompts and the prompts that we used in the class, our students had success in using all of them. Yes, yeah. Other questions? So while we wait to see if any more questions come in, one thing I would love to hear from the group is just if there are specific prompts that y'all have started using, for those of you who started using artificial intelligence in your work. I'd invite you to even add them to our library or drop them in the chat. I think it can be so creative. That was probably one of the most useful aspects of the ALA course, was just hearing and getting inspiration from some of the other prompts that folks were sharing out. All right, well, if there are no questions or no other thoughts, oh, so what was your professor's feedback after the class? It was generally positive. In fact, we actually just had a meeting with the same professor today, and we were talking about how it was our session, because it happened so early in the semester. Our session was for some of the students had actually never used AI before. So it was during our session that we were actually able to get some of the students signed on and working with some of these AI tools for the very first time. Um, and it was just like a good kind of like introduction for them. And I'm glad it was us being able to do it so we could provide them with some guardrails too. Yeah, one of my favorite other prompts, I don't think I put it on here, was please take my notes from, go to XYZ conference, take notes for each conference. Please, we have to write blog posts as part of our professional development here at Wake Forest for every conference that we attend. So I've developed a prompt where I say, take my notes from this presentation and please provide an interesting, witty overview of this conference based on these notes. And it gives me a nice little outline for my blog for my professional development purposes. Oh, that's a great one, Benjamin. Yeah, I think that's really like one of the powers to Katie's comment. I think that's really one of the powers I'm finding with AI, is just to kind of get out of my own bubble, my own kind of perspective, and put myself in the shoes of somebody else to really like think about some of the different perspectives that are out there that we could be encountering with our students. So Matthew asked, does Wake Forest have a specific policy regarding AI use by students, or is it up to individual professors and classes? So Matthew, it is up to individual professors and classes. Um, there is no kind of like official use policy. Yeah, there's some really great insights, ideas. This is what I love when we start talking about AI. It's just so many creative ways you can use it in and out of the classroom. So Victoria asked, did you have a chance to discuss citational practices with students during your session, or more broadly, how are you approaching the question of oh, I just lost it, how whether to disclose when Gen A has been used? Um, so we in our business school is kind of interesting. Citation is not super mandated. And Summer, correct me if I'm simplifying it, but it's been an upward battle, getting students to cite in the business school. So for us, we always mention at the top, especially in classes where AI use has been permitted, to check with the professor, right, about how they expect AI to be cited. And then we go on to provide some suggestions. For us personally, I know I've leaned heavily on APA 7's website, it has some good examples of how to cite chat or any artificial intelligence, but it's really kind of been up to the professor about how they disclose. This particular professor that we work with here has students, what did he call it, Summer? Um, and like an attestation form that they have to fill out with every single assignment, giving kind of very specific examples of where and how they've used AI. That's kind of probably one of the more extreme examples I've seen, and that's really all on the professor to kind of explain. But others, we've passed along some examples of how they could cite it. So Greta asks, are faculty inviting you into their class to conduct this instruction? I'm finding it difficult to get into classes for business database instruction. I need to conduct something like this as a workshop, hoping students attend on their own. Yeah, so I would say these are definitely relationships we've developed with faculty, and then they've just really given us kind of the leeway to start delving into this kind of larger conversation about artificial intelligence, just because they themselves are trying to also figure out how to do it with students. So when we say like, hey, we've got some ideas about, if this is something that's of interest in your classes, we'd be happy to share that. So Maggie asked, did you notice any differences in individual group consults after the session compared to I've lost it. I think it said, oh, compared to past semesters. I would say, and then I'll let Summer, sorry, I feel like I'm bogarting the conversation here, Summer. I would say, I think they've gotten easier is not the right word, but they've gotten more interesting. In the sense, I feel like we're able to go deeper faster. Does that make sense? I don't know. Summer, do you want to give your
No, I
perspective?
agree. I would have said
Yeah, yeah, so like instead of us kind of really having to like spend a large amount of time talking about like how do Boolean operators, like how do they work, we can kind of quickly show them, right? Like how they work in action and how we can begin to like customize that and how like putting in different different keywords, etc., like switching them out, looking at different trade, but we can just get much deeper into kind of the strategy piece of it than we could previously. Have any students raised environmental concerns around AI in my own institution? That comes out a lot, as it probably should. Yeah, so I've actually had this come up more in my undergraduate classes actually than in my graduate classes. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard the environmental aspects to be discussed in my graduate classes, but it has come up a time or two in my undergraduate classes. Students saying like they've heard about it and they want to know more about it, and so we kind of dive in it from there.
Do you want to speak on Carrie's question about?
Oh, has your school developed any broad policies about AI use, or is it left up to the individual professors? It is left up to the individual professors.
The Center for Advancement of Teaching did put out like an example, like AI
Yeah,
statement you could use in your syllabi if you want to. At least
yeah.
there's like some language floating around, but it's not like the official one and only language.
All right. Doris, is there any that I'm missing? Any comments that Summer and I are missing?
I don't see anything. I just see people, the last commentary was, I like the artificial intelligence disclosure AID framework by or call Weaver, and there's a URL that's attached to that for the issue of citations or giving credit for AI use. And then Lou Marie she says uploaded the RUSA guidelines for reference and asked it to write, oops, I just lost it. Yeah, write up emails to students I consulted and using the guidelines. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's it, unless there are any other last minute questions that we could take. We have just 5 minutes remaining.
And ironic, our session on AI confused somebody's AI note taker. I just feel like that's very meta.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right. Well,
everyone.
awesome. Thank you all so much. There's our emails if you have any other questions. Thanks for your time and attention.
Okay, thank you, Summer and Morgan, so much for posting the activities, showing us your activities, your lessons learned, and also for providing that prompt list. I know that will become useful for many of us who are attending today. And I also want to thank you for addressing all the questions that came in through chat. All right, I'll hand it over to Nora at this time.
All right, so I think we have a little bit of a break now until our next session begins at 2 o'clock. So if you'd like to go and get a drink, just take a minute to stretch your legs. This is a great time to do that, but we'll be starting very promptly on the top of the hour at 2 with our next session. And the next session is Bridging Academic Data Literacy Competencies and Workforce Needs, Insights from an Interview Study. So we look forward to seeing you back at 2.